ready to start.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is the January 7th, 2022, the first Streets and Transportation Committee meeting for the city of Rehoboth Beach in the new year. Calling the meeting to order at 1:30 p.m. Thank you all for joining us. I'd like to first start by thanking, we've got Kevin Williams and Chief Banks joining us on the video today. I want to thank them for joining. I want to thank all of you for your continued service to the committee into the new year, and thank all of those that are watching us and participating from home. I would like to note that John Dewey, a member of this committee, recently resigned. He's had some additional stuff going on that would not permit him to dedicate the time and effort that he'd like to the committee. So he has resigned. As I mentioned in the last meeting, it is my intention to nominate Elise Moore, who's been a property owner in town for a long time and currently owns the Admiral Hotel on Baltimore. I think they own one or two other businesses in town. As I mentioned, she's been on the Baltimore-Wilmington Avenue Streetscape Task Force, so I thought that would be a good addition to keep that continuity and representation of this group alive there. With that,
who were you talking about?
Elise Moore.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep, property owner and owner of the Admiral Hotel.
Okay.
With that, so I'm going to do a roll call. I'll just let the record reflect that all members are present and we've got a quorum. Approval of minutes. So I'm still trying to get a hold of the July 22nd, 21 minutes. I've not been able to do so. I don't know who has them. John, I think you were the only one that wasn't on the last meeting. Were you the one taking those minutes?
I don't remember doing that now.
Oh, okay.
Maybe Donna did.
Okay. Donna? No. Okay. I might need to go back and listen to that meeting and just type up some minutes. But going forward, do we have a volunteer to take minutes? Donna, you look like you need some extra work in your life.
I can do it, Ed, if you want.
Okay, David, thank you. I really appreciate it. So we will defer the approval of minutes until the next meeting. Correspondence, I do not have any record of any public correspondence related to this committee. So that, unless anyone has any. With that, we're going to old business, which is updates and continued discussion on the potential crosswalk on Rehoboth Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets. I think we were, at least I was, had several discussions with the former chair, Caluzzi, and Mayor Mills, and we're trying to track down some studies that were done by DelDOT, and we've not yet been able to obtain that. Kevin, do you have any update on that front? I think last I heard is you and Sharon were going to meet with someone from DelDOT this week.
No, thanks, Commissioner. I had not really realized there'd been a study apparently many years ago or some years ago, Beacon Engineering, or it might have been DBF at the time when he was working for DBF. But one of our consultants, Bob Palmer, was aware that there was some talk or study done on a crosswalk between 4th and the traffic circle, I guess. So he's trying to find his records. He has been unsuccessful so far to locate, but he does recall there was talk of one or a study done some years ago, but hadn't been able to find the results of any concrete results from that.
Could I make a comment or
Yeah, go ahead,
suggestion
Donna.
here? I went out and I looked at that area of Rehoboth Avenue yesterday, and on this topic, I mean, it would be nice to have a crosswalk there, but it's very difficult with all those intersections. They're complex intersections there. And I'm wondering if we as a committee just couldn't agree that we think it would be a good idea to have a crosswalk there and leave it up to the professionals. Just leave it up to Kevin and Del Dot, because that's a Del Dot street. The state will have to make the final decision. Why couldn't we as a committee perhaps make the recommendation, we encourage that and just put it in their hands? And if we don't, or my other thought was, it's gonna be hard to decide how to put a crosswalk with there. Maybe we just leave it as it is. Maybe it's just less risky letting people jaywalk as they currently choose to do rather than putting in a crosswalk. I think jaywalking will continue even if there's a crosswalk. I'm not aware of really a lot of jaywalking in that area. I've not encountered it. Maybe I'm not traveling there at the busiest hour, but those were my thoughts. And I thought maybe the committee has a lot on its agenda. Maybe this is one item we could turn over to the professionals with a recommendation one way or another.
I agree. That's always been Chief Banks' recommendation. We identify the problem and then let the professionals figure it out. But that section of Rehoboth Avenue between Starbucks and Dogfish is very busy and very active.
Right there. And that's very close to where the Scarborough crosswalk is. So it'd be a little weird to have another one added there. And that's such a complex intersection with Lake coming out, 4th Street, people making that U-turn, that left-hand turn to get over to Lake Street. I would really be concerned. I just think it's very tricky. It's very tricky. And I think the pros are the ones who would know best how to handle it.
I agreed, and I think that's why we were trying, before having too much further discussion, we were trying to locate that study done by professionals before we sort of took this to the next step.
Commissioner, if I could, I think it's an opportune time because we're being told by Del Dot that in this upcoming year, they're planning to start looking at the design for the resurfacing of Rehoboth Avenue. We were to say, I mean, if the committee wanted to recommend to the board, for the board to recommend, as we work with Del Dot on whatever upgrade plans are for Rehoboth Avenue, if there's a strong desire to add a crosswalk in there, then we can ask them to at least evaluate as they do their traffic study or analysis before they come in and repave and do whatever else they need to do, that we would ask them to evaluate that as part of that analysis.
My understanding is, and it's at least from my perspective, there is a lot of jaywalking in that area. It is a pretty long stretch without having a crosswalk, and there are some. It's not the easiest spot to try to put one in because of some of the challenges you mentioned, Donna. But from my understanding is this group has talked about it many times and has recognized that there does need to be some attention paid to that area and potentially putting one in if one can be put in.
And I think certainly wasn't around at the time, but the streetscape went in well before Dogfish Head became Dogfish Head. And I don't know if there was nearly the amount of traffic and pedestrian traffic in that vicinity, back when they designed the original streetscape.
Yeah.
Keith may know what was there at the time, but it probably wasn't Dogfish Head.
No, it was there.
And there are also crosswalks that are in two pieces that are detached from each other. It doesn't have to be one solid crosswalk that goes straight across. But again, I think it's their area of expertise. That's what they do every day they go to work.
Yeah, and we've got the advantage of having the median there where that can be an option.
And then in theory, we've also talked about curb profiles and radius of curbs and U-turns that are being made where there were no U-turns that were expected to happen but have happened. So there could be other things that they look at if they're going to repave the street.
How about if we would maybe make a motion that we would recommend that when DelDOT's resurfacing Rehoboth Avenue, that they evaluate the possibility of including an additional crosswalk between 4th and 5th.
I'll second that.
Oh, okay.
Well, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. And any further discussion?
Sounds good to me.
We'll do a group vote. If you could just, when you say, if you could just put your hand up too, so we can easily count. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay. Unanimous?
Unanimous. The motion carried. David, as you just mentioned, are there other aspects that we want DelDOT to consider when they're resurfacing?
Chief Banks and I spent a fair amount of time talking about streetscape and how it was implemented, and then how things have become used in the real world. So the example I typically use is the Jolly Trolley trying to do a U-turn at Lake Scarborough, where the curb profile is terrible. And it goes back to, well, they didn't want people making U-turns there, but the reality is they are. And so we either have no U-turn, or we make the street fit the way people are using it. But again, it's just something that they couldn't have foreseen. And again, I don't know how long ago that streetscape was put in. I kind of lose track of things, but it's been there for a while. And there are a lot of cases where people are making U-turns that were never intended. And it's all part of the loop people have to make to keep looking for parking, which is fairly consistent on a daily basis.
Kevin, what's the timeline here with DelDOT resurfacing?
Last time I talked to him, which was in October, I think, October, November, the desire was to start construction 2 years from then. So fall after the season of 2023. So about 18 months or so. So they should be starting that design work, at any time if they haven't already. So they'll contact us when they physically start, I would hope. We ask them to. So it should be this spring that they'll actually be out here doing surveys maybe and on the ground inspection.
Okay. So we're certainly going to ask them to evaluate and consider putting in a crosswalk at that time. Or are there other specific things that?
Weren't we also going to ask them to make all the crosswalks more prominent, redo the reflective paint, or somehow make all the crosswalks more obvious and prominent? We had a lot of discussion about that earlier.
Yeah.
I think once we got the strobe lights, that kind of got backburnered.
Right.
But if Kevin, if they're resurfacing, all of that's going to be redone anyway, correct?
It'll have to be.
Certainly the striping would be, and the white, the thermoplastic lines at those crosswalks. I don't know, because the design and of the cobblestone or paver crosswalks, I mean, that's a Rehoboth look. That's not a DelDOT look. And I don't know from back in the day whether the city had to pony up for that or not. I'm sure the city certainly told them how they wanted it to look. Whether DelDOT made us pay or not, I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't know if they were repaving the road, if they would do a major renovation on the crosswalks themselves or not.
Okay.
I think there was talk about making the reflective strips, redoing them.
And they would do
Leave
that. That's mainly on the paving itself. And we've tried several different things over the last few years anyway. Some we've, power washed ahead of the season. Some we've power washed and painted with the paint that has the glass chips in it that are very much more reflective. We've tried the thermoplastic, and all three of them last about as long and do about the same amount of good. One's much cheaper than the rest, so that's kind of the way we lean now, because we really, by mid-season with all the tire traffic over them anyway, there's not much difference between the three methods.
Well, the one that DelDOT's put in out of Route 1, it's a different substance. And that really is reflective.
And from a safety and do you see them real well? I think those look great. Now, do they meet the kind of the Rehoboth ambiance that people in Rehoboth want as they put together with the streetscape? That's a question for someone other than myself to answer.
Any other further discussion?
I would say that possibly Chief Banks and I could go back. I would say that conversation was probably 2 years ago, but we identified a few places where the curb profile could be changed, and it's probably 4 or 5. I'm thinking that we could just add that to our list to send up to DelDOT and say, hey, if you're going to repave the avenue, hopefully you're taking a look at A, B, C, D, E as part of your project.
Be glad to.
Great. Kevin, you will pass along to DelDOT, or I guess I will bring this before the mayor and commissioners before we officially send anything to DelDOT. But then I'll work with you to get that message off.
Right. And I think that would be a very easy ask, just to say, hey, need you to look at, if the board wants us to look at possibly putting one in there, then it'd be a very easy ask to have them evaluate that possibility.
Okay. All right, excellent. Any other discussion on that topic? Right. I'm sorry, Kevin, we've got quite a few updates on the agenda. A lot of them fall on you, so I'm just going to turn the next one over to you. There was a few height issues of the wayfinding signs for bicycles being at pedestrian height, not necessarily the height for cyclists. You want to just give us an update on those?
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner. Our sign guy was back after the holidays. Evan and I, and he went out. They were all at about 7.5 plus or minus feet to the bottom of the sign. We lowered them all, Bill lowered them all to the bottom of the sign. So they're straightened and tightened and all those things. So they should be good to go right now. I hope one of our ardent bikers can go by and take a look and make sure that they meet their needs.
Thank you.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for that. And the committee expressed the last meeting concerns about some of the gravel shoulders and pedestrian cyclist safety with those, and particularly with that Surf Avenue area that we're currently getting ready to repave. Do you want to give us an update on that?
Right, sure. I think it actually came. I think I brought it up and said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in that? We take a look at that." So we did. I think there was some interest there, especially from the bike safety standpoint to go. So we went out. I asked our consultant to go out and evaluate what it would take in order to do. And I was really focused on those first couple of blocks on Surf between Lake and Columbia. I think maybe it even only went to Pennsylvania or one of those. But there's a couple of blocks there where we've got the parking on the west side, that gravel parking that we always have trouble with ruts. So we went out, looked at it. It became a lot more than just put a layer, 2-inch asphalt down there and call it good. The material there needed to be reworked, but more importantly, we thought we'd have a stormwater drainage issue. So we'd have based on what we would have to cut and fill, and then the layer we'd have to almost do a curb along that bank where the sidewalk is, because all of a sudden the grades would not work. So it became much more in depth and complicated than we could have our contractor who's on the ground working try to take on. So we passed on that because it was just more than we were willing to be able to take on with the contractor who was on site at the time. We saw it as a target of opportunity if it made sense to do. You guys said, yeah, it'd be great from the bike perspective. So then we went back out, and as we did, more detailed look at it, became
So
impact.
Kevin, so Kevin, I went out and looked at that yesterday, knowing it was going to be on the topic, and it looked like, yeah, there was a repaving. It looked like there was the shoulders on the east side were filled in with blacktop. That looks like that was expanded. That looks good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the same as it was. There used to be a strip of asphalt on that side. To the
Oh, the
west.
whole side all the way down?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. It may have gone a little bit wider, but it wasn't a conscious effort to widen that.
Okay. Well, yeah, it looks good, except for those first 3 blocks from Lake down to Park, where still on the west side is the gravel. And so, and I was wondering, I was just curious why it wasn't done, like what, and so what you're saying was it was more of a drainage issue. You're afraid that.
And then the cost associated with adding that to it became prohibitive because of the additional work other than just putting asphalt down that it would have taken.
I wonder. I just wondered if it was right away or something.
Added layer that now there's a little bit of a drop off there, so we are going to come out and put some more gravel and a little more material under there, so we don't have the drop off, but it'll still be gravel.
Okay. I wondered. That was my question. Like, why? What was happening there?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something, and Kevin, thank you for looking at that and evaluating to see if there could be an easy, sort of fix there. Is this something that we want to pursue and make a recommendation to the mayor and commissioners? Something that's a little bit more long-term for the capital improvement plan, or just keep it on our radar. I think generally some of the gravel shoulders was a concern for a few committee members, not just in this area, but throughout the city in general. So what's the pleasure of the committee? Do we keep this on our radar? Do we want to make a recommendation to the mayor and commissioners?
I think we need to keep it on our radar because it's the gateway to the city. For 3 years ago, 50,000 cyclists came across there. So long term, and Chief Banks and I discussed that particular stretch of roadway a lot. Long term, it needs to be addressed.
I'm wondering if there's any plans to improve the storm sewer system, if that's in the works, and if that might dovetail with improving the shoulders there on Surf. Are they going to be reworking the storm drains in that area, Kevin?
There's no plan to at this point. Really, there's only the one drain, and it's there at the corner of Lingo's property that drains kind of straight across to the ocean, and that's been a problem forever because that pipe gets clogged quite easily, I guess, every time there's a big event. We haven't really had any reports of issues farther to the north and west, I guess, with stormwater issues. So we haven't, we're not looking at that actively as an area we need to improve.
When you say Lingo's property, you mean there, Lingo's Market on Baltimore?
No, the corner right at Surf and Lake.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Lingo's owns that, huh? That's their home. Okay.
Kevin, a few years ago, I don't remember if it came out of this committee or the Beach and Boardwalk Committee, but there was some evaluation done on sort of bridging some type of bike path with the north end of the boardwalk and reconfiguring that parking area and park around the Henlopen. that was a few years ago. It was discussed. Has that just died?
It didn't get a lot. Yes, there was a kind of a planning level study done that DBF did that kind of created, as you mentioned, a gateway to that part of the city, and it did some traffic improvements around that little triangle parking area. It actually tied the boardwalk with a bike trail that went all the way down to, I guess, Ocean Drive as it made the turn, as Surf makes the turn on at Henlopen. And it did some things at Lake Girard. So it was a huge kind of big picture kind of look at how we could turn that into a gateway. Did not get a lot of traction when it was presented, and that's probably been 3 years ago-ish.
It's been a while. It was very complicated.
Is that, well, while we're redoing the whole area, what would be nice was be working a restroom at that end of the boardwalk. There at Girard Park or that corner, or that's another, and maybe, was that part of that larger plan you were talking about, Kevin?
You asked to add in a what?
A restroom, a public restroom?
In fact, what we had in that concept at the time was, kind of an amphitheater, small amphitheater, outdoor kind of thing at Grove Park, right at the northeast corner of Grove Park, and it had a small restroom building complex, very similar.
Do you mean Lake Girard?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lake Girard. Yes.
Right. So was that going to be Lake Avenue Phase 3? What was that being called?
Say that again. Lake Avenue Phase 3.
Was it Phase 3 of Lake Avenue, or was it? It fell underneath the umbrella.
It could have been back in the day.
Yeah.
Just kind of the northern gateway to the city plan that DBF did several years ago.
I think many of us were sort of opposed to some of the changes right on the lake, the amphitheater, the restrooms in the park and not closer to the boardwalk. But I think it may still be worth considering sort of this gateway focus more closer to the boardwalk and a bike path, and traffic, and not so much sort of rearranging the area surrounding the lake, which is now mostly park. Kevin, you know what group that came from? Was that the Beach and Boardwalk Committee that initially spearheaded that?
That I don't know.
Well, we had a lot to do with it, our committee.
Yeah. I would have thought it more rightly come out of this one, but.
Well, not the whole. I think we were talking about somehow making the road aspect, just focusing, making the bike paths coming and going and that, improving that area. We talked about curbing, but I think all the other stuff was added by other people.
Yes.
Well, is this
Right, so I'm just gonna just show real quickly
there it is.
Right, continuation of this little stretch in front of the condos that took a bike path all the way down. Actually, it involved, I think, taking part of between the road and the dune and running that on the east side of the street. I haven't come across that as I'm searching, but that was part of the concept that was presented several years ago.
Could you get us copies of that?
Sure.
Good.
Maybe we revive that or look at it. Maybe drop out some of the things that the public didn't like, but keep in some that worked.
Yes.
Maybe scale it back some.
Well, I think a lot of that had to do too with.
But in doing that, we make sure the drainage is okay. Then we can pave the shoulders.
I think funding had a lot to do with that project.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Yeah.
So unless there's funding, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yep. There's a lot of street improvement projects, streetscapes, all that on the books, now or about to be on the books. So yeah, where this one would fall in that big priority is
Yeah.
interesting question.
Well, I think of all the things we've talked about in that area, I think a restroom is a #1 priority in that area. There's just not enough along the boardwalk, and wherever the city can add some public restrooms, it's needed. Uh,
Without question, at some point, there needs to be a restroom at the northernmost end and the southernmost end. I think everyone can agree with that. So why don't we, I'll work with Kevin on getting some of the historical data and the presentations from that project that was presented 3 years ago. We'll email those out to everyone, and perhaps we put this back on the agenda, a future agenda, to look at that and see if it's something we want to pursue, scaling it back to something smaller in scope. I think sounds like a path forward.
Yeah,
It sounds like there's a lot of work been done on it, and if we take a little more in-depth look, maybe just like you said, Ed, we can figure out something that could be palatable to everybody.
mhm.
Great. Any other?
Before leaving this topic, I just want to thank Kevin for the repaving there on Surf that was done. I think it looks much better. I think it looks like an improvement, what's already been done. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. It kind of all came together, right? We did Lake, we got it down there. State did Surf from Columbia on around for the new president, and now that just kind of connects it. So now you've got a nice continuous upgraded road pretty much all the way out. So I think it looks really nice too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it got accomplished quicker than I thought. I thought it was going to go much later into the winter. So that's great, Kevin. Last time we talked about the update on the sharrows being put in throughout the city. Kevin, you've got an update on that?
I do. So again, our sign guy and our paint guy are one and the same. So he's back now. So I talked to him the other day. I just wanted to pull up for us. Are you seeing the map?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what was identified to us as the want. So he's kind of marked all those out, or we had an intern mark them out this summer. So just wanted to ask if the committee wanted to provide any kind of prioritization as to where to start, that type of thing. But that's a large number, as you can tell. So he'll start taking it on as weather and time allow. But I think it'll be hard pressed to finish all of those before the season. So if we wanted to, do Rehoboth Avenue first.
Yes, Rehoboth Avenue first, please.
oh, I'd like to see that last. I don't like seeing any bikes on Rehoboth Avenue. It's very dangerous.
John, I'll tell you what, you get yourself stationed down there at the Canal Bridge and flag everybody down at Canal Street as they try to come into town.
Good.
It's a daunting task. There are it's a lot of families and a lot of people that aren't on a bicycle more than 1 week a year or one weekend. They're at risk more so than the other areas. And then coming across Silver Lake Bridge, Bayard would be my second choice. But
I think, well, I think Henlopen may be next because that's the way the state's routing all the bikers. I mean, that's a primary.
Henlopen seems to be fairly courteous. I don't really experience a lot of difficulty along there. It's rare that there's someone impatient because there's so many bicycles on that road. You can't, they're there all the time. It's just part of driving there now.
And Henlopen has a lot less vehicular traffic than the other streets identified.
Many more cars on Bayard than on Henlopen.
Oh, true.
And there'll be far more complaints of them on Henlopen Avenue than on some of the other streets.
I think the first stencil that would go down on Henlopen Avenue, Kevin's phone would be ringing while the paint was still wet. Just guessing.
Correct.
We're going to have to work on those folks.
And Kevin, just to reiterate, this has already been approved by the mayor and commission.
Correct. The board voted on this last spring.
Any other comments for Kevin on prioritization?
I'm just thrilled to see this getting close.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, wherever you can start.
Okay, how about if I just throw it out? I'll go Rehoboth, both directions first, and then Second Street, both directions, then State.
Yes.
But we
Okay.
don't want to do anything to encourage Rehoboth Avenue. That is such a dangerous stretch for a bicycle. I shudder every time I see a bike on it.
Mhm.
Sadly, we've reached the conclusion that there are many things we can't control. So underneath that umbrella, we cannot change people's personalities. So they're going to be, and this is a Chief Bank saying, which I have borrowed profusely lately.
But want to encourage people to do that?
They're going to ride there whether we like it or not. And it's more a function of making the motorists aware that they're going to be sharing that space with a cyclist than encouraging cycling. They're going up there regardless of what we say they do.
And I think if I could, I'm trying to get to our map. There's no intention to put anything between, if you can still see this, the canal and the circle. So we don't want to give them the impression that, hey, yeah, go ahead, straight ahead. We want you to go that way, take the circle.
Yeah.
We're not going to start them until after the circle. So by
We
that
want
time,
them to come down Canal Street
already
is
committed to do
plan
that.
A.
want them there or not. And it's more of a reflection to let the drivers know that, there's going to be some crazy bicyclists riding down Rehoboth Avenue.
And
What are the green?
Share the road.
I'm sorry?
The green X's, what are they?
Just, it's a different road than Henlopen. For whatever reason, our guy, he color coded them based upon the road they were going on.
Oh,
So that's coming down State, obviously, and then he was planning, he recommended doing Canal the same time we do Rehoboth.
right.
On Canal Street at Rehoboth, from what I recall, there's a right angle sharrow there
I
to
think.
try to encourage people to turn right
Mhm.
Yes.
and then go down Canal Street and come through the neighborhoods to get downtown and to
That's
the
the
boardwalk.
way, right?
Yes.
That's always plan A.
Mhm.
But for every one person that turns right on Canal Street, there are 9 going straight ahead.
so just to address John's concern, we're continuing to encourage people to turn on Canal Street. But for those that do not, we want to make the vehicles on Rehoboth Avenue aware that there will be cyclists. And,
Yes.
and we do need to share the road.
I'm sorry, since I'm new to this, are these arrows in the road, Kevin?
They're
They're called
actually
sharrows.
paint sharrows because there's actually a couple of chevrons and typically a bicycle silhouette as well. And I guess the chevrons point you in the direction you're supposed to be going.
Okay, thanks.
It's a
any
project
other-
for some CB unit that needs a summer task.
Sorry, we're all tied up in overseas.
Yeah, okay.
Kevin, and this is a city employee, right? Or signed?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments for Kevin on this topic?
Looking good. Thank you.
Yeah, I do there for the minutes. Kevin, you said you're going to do Rehoboth in both directions, second in both directions, followed by State.
State and then Henlopen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, bringing us to new business. Many of the committee members wanted to discuss in pretty general terms, pedestrian and cyclist safety in the context of looking at things that we've implemented over the past few years and evaluate how they're working, such as some of the silent policemen, the rumble strips, or the forget what you call them,
Speed bumps,
the speed bumps,
speed cushions.
speed cushion. We've got the flashing lights on Rehoboth Avenue now. So those were some of the things you guys wanted to talk about and just evaluate. I asked the chief to join us for this topic so he can give us statistics or answer any questions we may have. So I'll open it up for general discussion. Chief, do you want to start us off at all with any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Well, many years ago, we did install some solar speed signs on Columbia Avenue. That was our first one to try to slow vehicles down, so they'll flash the speed to people. And that was successful. We put 2 of them in, and then we were asked in Country Club on Hickman Street to install 2. So that was done. And then again, the city was asked, but it was outside of our jurisdiction on Rehoboth Avenue Extended. So 1 went there. And of course, there's some flashing on speed signs on Robson Drive. Again, that's outside our jurisdiction. So they seem to be quite popular. And then you see that now on Route 1. So that was our first crack at trying to slow vehicles down, because a lot of bicyclists and pedestrians and all. We started with Columbia Avenue in that area, just because there's so many bicyclists and people were actually pushing baby strollers and everything else out there at the time. Of course, it still occurs. Then we went a few years back too, did additional stop signs on Henlopen Avenue, where we started having more bicycle traffic, and did 4-way stops. And I think that has helped. That came about because we had a lot of some petitions from the areas, but not necessarily from the homeowners on Henlopen Avenue, where it's asking, hey, vehicles are speeding too much. We need to put more things to slow them down. And they did not want speed bumps at the time. So we did the 4-way stop signs, and that seems to be a happy median. We did do work with Del Dot as far as to see, it's not state maintained, what their thoughts were. They typically were not in favor of it. The statistics with traffic and crash data did not really support it, but the mayor and commissioners decided to do that. And I think it has helped to be able to slow the traffic down there. We did, after that on Columbia Avenue, by more, really one homeowner, but others signed off on it, want us to put a speed hump or bump on Columbia Avenue. And before you get down to the traffic circle going that way. And I think that's helped. We've got a lot of positive feedback from that. It is actually damaged right now from the latest snowstorm that's being fixed by a snow blade. But we've actually been asked for other people if we could install in other areas. They're expensive. It does create an issue, like I said, with plowing and making sure the motorists understand it and see it. But as far as the neighborhood that people have talked to, they've been pleased with it, and they're happy that speed bump has gone in. And so
is that what you call the speed cushion there?
Yeah, speed cushion, speed hump. They have several different names depending on what brand you buy, really.
Okay.
And they could be installed in different ways, just a single, wider. We wanted to make sure this one was a little bit lower and wider, just because of the fire trucks and all that to go over it. And of course, it's heavily utilized. So with trash trucks and bigger trucks and all that going to North Shores, so you didn't want all that banging as they're going across it. So we wanted to give them something to know they need to slow down and take the time going across it, and hopefully they'll maintain that all the way down. That is a residential area.
And for those that have been here during or since Monday's snow, you'll see that the Del Dot plow that came through that night tore a good portion of it up. So we actually have closed the lane at that location, because it's got, the connecting bolts are kind of sticking up out of the ground now, so we don't want to drive over those. So we've contacted a contractor. I have not heard from him yet on the schedules when he can get back in, and because they interlock, it's you have to kind of pull different sections up to be able to put that individual panel back down and then rebolt it to the ground. So the downside of them, from the maintenance perspective.
Just out of curiosity, does Del Dot pay for that?
Well, I sent, we have a Del Dot employee resident in the city of Rehoboth Beach, who we work with quite a lot. So I sent it to him. I said, we're just going to add it to your next water bill once we figure out how much. So he said he'll pass it along. We'll see if they offer up any.
Yeah, so to continue on, the next thing we did, and came from this committee on recommendations, we recently put up on Rehoboth Avenue the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. at the crosswalks. I think they have worked. I've heard several things. As a matter of fact, I have an email out right now from an individual that was passed on from the mayor in reference to they're not bright enough, the yellow. I think they are. I think what's happening, people see it, and because of Delaware law, unless somebody's in a crosswalk, a car doesn't have to stop unless they're in the middle of the crosswalk. So even though people are standing on the edge of the sidewalk, the vehicles technically do not have to stop. So it really comes down to a courtesy. I think they see it, and you can almost see people make sure they get through as it starts flashing. So I think it does work. I was asked if you could put red, that we can't legally make those red to force somebody to stop again, because how the law is written and under the safety traffic manual. But I do think it's helped. I think people are aware of it. Again, Rehoboth Avenue is just kind of a tricky, it's a double lane there, and people are always concerned if they stop and a person starts walking in front of them, will the other car on the other side stop, or do they see them from being blocked? So we're kind of unique here, but I think they have worked. Kevin would be able to say more as far as the maintenance, how they've held up, but I haven't necessarily noticed any issues or concerns with them. So we've done that recently. Right before the end of in the fall season at Lake and King Charles, we did the one-way street there. Just as you come across the bridge, we did bump that out because bicyclists were going the wrong way, and quite honestly, cars were starting to go the wrong way. So we bumped that out so we could put another sign there to make sure people noticed that and saw that, as well as signs and some trees that we had cut back a little bit, or trimmed up, I should say. So that we did that at again this fall. And we've already talked about the sharrows going in and the prioritize on where we want to go on that. From this committee, I was asked last year and the year before to talk to the maintenance department, and which we did, Kevin, with about the thermoplastic and repainting the lines and all. And they really stepped it up. I got to congratulate them trying to get that done more on a yearly thing, but definitely as needed. So if something's peeled up, it's not too long for it, it's fixed. But as Kevin mentioned earlier, it does not last that long. We have a lot of volume here, and as soon as you take it in a short period, no matter what type you use, it gets blackened out and all. So that's just kind of where we're at with the products that's available to us at the time. But they are making more conscientious effort with that. I did reach out to DelDOT the other year too, and I think Kevin was involved with this too, about when they restripe, they've done around the traffic circle. And Kevin, I think our crews ended up doing that, but they said they would help out with that too in the future if needed, around the roundabout to make sure the arrows and things coming in town were cleaned up. So, and then of course goes without saying, everybody's aware of the DelDOT, the bike path going behind through Grove Park and things. So we've done quite a bit of work. We're always kind of limited during the season when we can do it, and what we can take on because of the right of ways and things like that. Because there's just a lot of events and a lot of people, and I mean that's a good thing, but that's just a reality that we have here in Rehoboth Beach. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if go more in detail on something specific, but that's kind of some of the things I can think of that came to my mind when the commissioner asked me to bring this topic up. Kevin, you have anything you would like to add that we've done?
No, Chief, I think you got most of that, so that's good.
So I have something to add about that. So could we consider the radar speed guns there on the speedway of Bayard, since we have that median in the middle there? It would be very simple to put a radar gun, solar powered gun as someone's coming into town across Silver Lake, and then you could put one the other direction as they're heading out of town. Because I see a lot of people going well over that 25. It would seem to be very simple to do there on Bayard.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, I've seen people speeding there too. I'm in that area a lot, and I too see them having too much speed coming in or going out.
Right. Ironically, from Baird Avenue there, the biggest area that they're speeding, believe it or not, it's not down that end, is actually when they're coming across Rehoboth Avenue and then they're picking up the other way, is around Delaware Avenue is some of the higher speeds that we get believe it or not,
Oh,
from that area. Again, I'm not the chairman here, but I would say it's probably you got your group making a decision if that's what you want. And then it would be sent to the mayor and commissioners for decide if they want to, and they're in budget prep now. So if so, one of us will be tasked on getting some prices and deciding to put it on there. But we have actually been sitting there with speed enforcement and taking some data on that. And it's the forgotten mile coming in. They are speeding. They typically do slow down, and they kind of pick it up for some odd reason there at Delaware and Philadelphia for some reason.
Yeah, I've seen it on both. I've seen it on both ends, but it would seem to be somewhere along there. If we get one in each direction, and in the median, it can't. You're not redoing the pavement, Kevin. You're just putting it right in the median where those the cherry trees are anyway. It would seem to me it would be very simple and pretty cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
So Chief, it sounds like you and your officers have recognized that there's some speeding issues on Bayard, as some of the committee members have witnessed.
Well, we'll have to find speed. And I don't mean to be generic about it. Of course, we could always pull somebody over at under 30 miles an hour, but we'd pull a lot of people over by doing that. And then it gets into where you pull them over area for logistically. So yes, there's a little bit of speed, but it's not excessive speed. I don't want to sit down and say they're 40, 50 miles an hour. We're talking in a high impact area, 32, 33, which is way too fast for that area during the summer months and things. So there is a speed there. I will tell you, it's amazing when you're sitting there walking around and you don't have a speed gun or your radar unit in your vehicle. The cars look like they're going a lot faster. And I know myself, just kind of being off the road and not on there as much, running radar every day. I used to be able to nail that car is going 30 miles an hour. That car is going 40 and all. And now that I don't, it looks faster. And I'll be riding with somebody. What was that car doing? And they tell me that was so much slower. So it confused me. But short, yeah. So we have some speed there, but it's not extreme, I would say. But a sign's always a value. You always want to make people aware. And
what is the actual speed limit there on 2nd Street?
25.
25. Okay. So anybody going 35, that's too fast. I support what Dave's saying.
And that's rare. That's why I say not getting there. You're getting, when you get to 32, 33 in that area, which is fast or what. I'm not saying that in the summertime or anywhere it's speeding, but I just want to be clear as far as the stats won't show, it's going to show hundreds of thousands of cars going across that intersection, and that brings the speed down. So it's going to say the average speed is, way under the speed limit. But is there a speed increase in speed? Yes, or whatever. My officers sit there and can see it on an individual basis. You'll get a 32, 33, but it's extreme to get to 40 to 50. And sometimes hear that from neighbors saying how fast they're going, and we go down there, but it does look faster. That's why I brought it up. So I didn't mean to cloud that up. Yes, we can, if you guys decide to put like us to look into that, you can bring it up at the commissioners meeting for approval, and we would move forward.
Well, I'd like to throw out in this discussion is that I think it's a good idea to put those radar speed reminders there on Bear. It's just a good idea to put those on the main streets coming into Rehoboth, because we really have to help people change their mindset. You're coming to a town with tons of pedestrians, bicycles, you just got to slow down. And I think any way we help people change their mindset to slow down and to accept it, the better and the safer we all are. And so the other thing I question about those are, can they be turned on and off in different seasons? Like, in the off season, it's not such an issue, but in the prime season, it's a big issue. So can those kind of radar signs, can they be programmed to operate, say, April through October, but not in November through March?
I guess.
I mean,
you
there might be a way to
can,
handle.
they're solar and you can do, yes, I'm sure you can sit there and program. It depends on the type that you buy. They all have accessories to them. I guess the question will come to, why would you want to do that? If you're educating the public on speed, that would be year round. And I would mention that we do have some portable speed signs too that we can go out. We use it sometimes for directional. You'll see the signboards, and a couple of our signboards actually we can put out and tell people your speed. So it won't necessarily say what the speed limit is, but it will sit there and say what your current speed is. And we have put that on like Munson Street. We were asked to do that when the sign's not being used for different construction or events, and also we can put that out there too.
Chief, when you said people, you find that people are speeding, particularly in that Delaware, Philadelphia, is that going southbound, northbound, or both?
It's going both, or how it splits there. So it's I just don't know if it's wide enough where they're just not sure and they just kind of gun it, or if they're just coming through the intersection of Rehoboth Avenue and to get through the intersections. And usually you will see that in the fall and winter. Again, in the summertime, it's just so busy in that area with people, you're not going across anywhere too fast. And that's why I said the numbers, when we put the surveys out there, you're going to see very low speeds because there's such a sheer volume of vehicles, so that averages get skewed. However, yes, with the officer sitting there, they can recognize that there are some. I just wanted to make sure when you asked a question about we identified speeding issues, that it's not extreme, because there's areas people say they're running 40 or 50 and they are not. And by our calculations in speed, but it does look a lot faster than it is. But again, I like the speed flashing signs. They should be in key areas. You don't ever want to go overboard with them, because then people just get tired of looking at them, and then they're not that useful. So you want to sit there and use them sparingly, but in key areas. So to make sure people understand this is important in this area. And Baird probably is correct on doing that.
Chief, just ballpark figure, how expensive are these? Obviously, you need to get each one bid and out, but are we talking 5,000, 25,000?
It's been a while, so I'm going to be off. But I think if you sit around 5,000, it's not that expensive. What gets is just the time and the materials, because we install it ourselves. And there's different ones. We usually do the upgrade to poles because we want the decorative poles to look better for our town and things. So you get into that. You can go as cheaply as the ones, I don't want to say cheaply, but you see on Robson Drive that has just the 2 stakes in the ground or whatever, and put it across. So 5,000 each one would probably be sufficient. They're not extreme now.
Well, I think they should be attractive. I think whatever kind of signs to slow people down and whatever's most attractive.
That's why ours goes up, because we've always tried to do it on the decorative poles and look a bit better.
So we took something pretty broad and narrowed it down specifically to this Baird Avenue. Any more comments? Does someone want to make a recommendation?
I would make a recommendation that we put it at least 1 or 2, one in each direction on Baird Avenue.
I would second the motion.
Okay. Could we leave it vague enough and with enough discretion for Kevin and the chief to make the specific recommendation on how many and where, just that this committee recommends that we put something there based on their expertise?
Yes, I'd say that's reasonable. Those guys are out all the time. Chief knows, but something in that area to assign to a radar gun sign.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a group vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Like, we've got a unanimous decision and the motion carries. Still on the broad topic of pedestrian and cyclist safety and some of the measures we put in place over the past years, and what's been successful in evaluating those things. Any more comments?
I had one comment on the strobes. I've noticed in some jurisdictions that they have double lights on the poles or the posts. So there's one high and one low more for the cars that are nearby, close to the crosswalk, and one higher up for the cars that are further back. And I've also noticed that in some cases they have double posts. So they're a little bit broader in terms of their intrusion into people's space, which I don't really find that to be all that aesthetically pleasing. But the high and low strobes might be something, if we were to feel as though we could do a better job, it might be something to consider.
Kevin, Chief, any thoughts on that?
I guess I'll start, and sometimes I put my foot in my mouth, but I think people are seeing the strobes. I think they make a conscious decision not to stop. So
That's true.
I truly believe that. Just talking to the officers riding around, I think when they see it, you can see their heads looking both ways, and they're seeing where it is, or they see the pedestrians on the other side of the street crossing, and they know they had the median, so they'll continue. And once one car goes, it's, well, I'm right behind that car, I will follow. That's just my personal observation. You can always add another strobe easily enough, but I do think the majority of people see the strobe, they understand it, they just choose to move on. And
So it's the same syndrome that we have at the circle,
yes.
where people just choose to ignore the yield and go.
No.
Yeah,
Well, I'll have to
Chief,
confess here. I'll confess. I went through a yellow strobe on Rehoboth Avenue, and I was through it before I realized what I was doing. So it wasn't like I saw it and I chose just to keep going through. I just wasn't used to that, or I caught it late. So I think we're still evaluating how well those strobes are working on Rehoboth Avenue. They're new, and I think we're still evaluating, and maybe see how they work in the next year or two, and maybe adding a lower flashing lights would be a good idea.
Now, that being said, again, for Kevin makes any comments he may have, is I think a lot of people, even before the strobe lights went in for crosswalks, did not realize that's a crosswalk or whatever. And I do think the city consciously decided to have those pavers, but they do not show up, as it's already been mentioned, like the ones out on the highway. So a lot of people do get confused, as Donna just mentioned, and they see the blinking lights, but okay, what's that giving me? What's that alerting me to? And they're on top of it before they understand that it's actually a crosswalk. And and so I think it goes hand in hand. Yes, you can put the other flashing light, but a lot of people do not understand that's a crosswalk. They see that, okay, that's alerting me to something. I'm on top of it, and I'm going through it.
Well,
I think it's been an improvement.
Yeah,
I think it has improved.
I do too. Overall, I think it's helped. I truly do.
Yeah.
Again, I think we could really help the brick crosswalks if we put some yellow striping on either side. You don't have to paint over the brick. Just put some yellow striping on the street as you're approaching and as you're leaving. Just because those yellow stripes catch people's eye, people are looking at the road. It makes those crosswalks more prominent. And I think I just think that could help. Do it, just leave just add some yellow stripes on either side on the blacktop, on either side of where the white reflective material is.
any other comments, discussion? Any other in this particular topic, any areas we want to focus on at a future agenda?
I have a general question here, and I had emailed Kevin about this after the last meeting because I didn't want to take people's time up, but I figured I'm going to ask it anyway now, since we're on the subject. So we've had a house down here. My parents have had a house down here since the 30s. Now I live here, and I understand that, at First Street and Rehoboth Avenue and Second Street and Rehoboth Avenue, after the season's over, we take off the no right turn on red, and we allow people to right turn on red, and then we allow them to turn left at both of those intersections. I just wonder now, with so many more people, and back in the day, back in the 60s, there was nobody but a horse and buggy going down that road in December time period. Now, it's like a freeway because people live down here now. I'm just wondering, I can't get it through my CB mind, as Kevin would say, why we take those signs off and then we put them back up again. Because I was there during Thanksgiving holiday and it was off, and there was people practically running people over in the intersections because now they can turn right on red. I was just wondering, is there any, I know a lot of the old timers I'm sure wouldn't want to change that, but I'm just wondering why on earth we do that.
Kevin?
I got no response.
Okay.
Oh, that predates Kevin.
I will tell you, I like to personally, right? Because I'm running around town a lot early in the mornings. The right turn on red is great. Left turns, you can put them back up and leave them up all year round. I wouldn't care at all. But
Yeah.
Right turn, I don't like sitting for a minute waiting for turning right. When I'm trying to get down to the other end of King Charles or whatever.
Well, we could put the chief there and he could give you a ticket.
What happens there over Rehoboth Avenue is people stack up into the avenue because they can't turn. And so I really enjoy it when they come back on.
Well, I have to say ditto to Kevin. That's exactly how I feel. Hey, those right turns, of course, we should have that in the off season. The U-turn, no, that just blocks up people.
Right.
I agree.
So
I do believe it's in the code, so it wouldn't require a code change, right, Chief? As far
That's
as
correct.
why we have certain things in codes, I'll never understand, but some are, some aren't. But we did research that one. That one's in the code, so it does take a code change.
All right, because this is a little bit off topic, what I'm going to do is put the issue of left turn signs in the off season on our next meeting agenda, and see if we can get that out there. So perhaps we can get some public comment on that. I think would be helpful.
Thank you.
Yep, and I'll take a look at exactly how it's written in the code and what might we need to do to change it. Any more comments?
I had one question. My assumption is, Kevin, and I may be wrong, but it seems like the walk your bike stencils are slowly getting rescreened on the sidewalks.
Is that a question or a comment?
That's it. Let's make it a question. Kevin, are the walk your bike stencils getting rescreened on the sidewalks?
They should be.
Okay,
They should be.
good.
Good.
Yeah, but we just added, over 100 sharrows for the poor guy to paint. In addition to all of his parking space paints and all the other things. So, yeah, well, we added to the list.
I will be sure to thank him when I see him, and I won't ride through his paint.
Just make sure you get some right side up.
Yes.
Anything else on that topic? I see we're just a little bit of we're over time, and I hate to do that to our IT staff that's patiently helping us on these meetings, and Kevin and Chief, thank you for being here. Any other comments on that, on broadly pedestrian safety or cyclist safety, and if there's any parts that we want to narrow and focus on a future agenda. Okay, with that, any other future agenda topics? I think we've got a few things here to move forward with. But is there anything else specific that's off topic that we want to bring up?
Well, two things I'd like to see on a future agenda. Number one, improving things at the traffic circle, safety there. And number two, talking about creating better parking spaces for delivery trucks.
All right, got those. Anything else? All right. Our next meeting is I do have our next meeting is February 4th at 1:30. I do have scheduled for that meeting Cliff Hildery, who is on is one of the members of the public on our call today. I do have him scheduled to present to us that meeting to talk about the Homeowners Association's bicycle map and safety brochure that they put together. They would very much like our stamp of approval to have the city endorse that and to make that almost to be a city document that is made available in City Hall and on our website, etc. So I do have that. And with that is citizen comment. And Cliff, since you're a citizen in the meeting today, if you're still there and with us, if you've got any comment, now's your chance.
Thanks, Commissioner. What I just wanted to do was to make the members of the committee aware of that brochure. We're, I guess, in a budget period coming up, and you know, the Homeowners Association printed 10,000 copies of this last year on our own nickel, even though that's not really part of our charter. It was part of the experiment that we undertook in doing this. The genesis of the brochure really comes from the June 2012 bicycle and pedestrian plan, where you find the common thread in there is education, education, education. And so we took that to heart and decided to put together some education for all the different folks that come to Rehoboth Beach, because really we came to the conclusion that in the in the summertime, Rehoboth Beach looks much more like an urban environment than what many visitors come from, and they also come from areas where there don't have sidewalks, or they're encouraged to ride their bikes on sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the reason we made that brochure, and I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention. And you're correct. We would happily, modify that or turn that over as is to the city to produce. And just as a note, I see in the 2012 plan, they had budgeted or estimated a budget of $20,000 for that brochure to produce 20,000 copies. Here you've got it for essentially nothing. So, by the way, I don't want to put him on the spot, but Chief Banks has seen this, and one of his folks even got some very positive comments back from the State Highway Commission about how progressive Rehoboth Beach was on making this brochure.
Yes, thank you. Definitely not put me on the spot. I was going to make these comments anyway. That we did have the brochures made up and paid for us last year, and we did hand those out, and very successful. It is, as I said, the common sense safety tips. It was well done. The committee board reached out to us, and we made suggestions and went back and forth. So it was very useful. And as you mentioned, we did reach out to Office of Highway Safety when we do meetings with them periodically on how things are going through the summer, what can they do to help us and all. And we were talking about these brochures, and they were very complimentary on how proactive the citizens here were in Rehoboth Beach. So I do want to thank all of them for putting that together. And like you said, on their dime, and it really wasn't their scope, but it was very informative. And yeah, actually holding it right now in my hands, and it was the summer officers that handed out, the bike officers, they thought it was very useful. And it's always important to be able to have something to hand someone too when you're trying to educate them, and it had a map too, so that was useful too, to tell them where the best areas to bike and cross at to be more safe. So thank you.
How are those maps been distributed in general? Do the bike shops hand them out? Do they have a stack to give to?
Yeah, actually, I think they did, and we took some to the bike shops. Absolutely. Again, we didn't have, wasn't the endless supply of them and all, but we did take them some bike shops. I think they were handing them out as they were doing the rentals and all as much as possible. Did they always? Probably not. But again, they had limited supplies and all. So we did that. I had my bike officers have them. And sometimes, and we had them with the officers doing the crosswalk safety through the Office of Highway Safety. We do pedestrian crosswalks, and we usually don't give tickets for that. They just want us to educate the public. And we have a form we hand out to people that are in violation of that. But at the same time, if we saw bicycles on the sidewalk or different things, we also stopped them and tried while we were doing those 4-hour blocks and gave them this map and gave them common sense tips. So again, it's well done, and I look forward to him next meeting to be able to show their work, and I think it was useful.
And one of the major distribution methods we used was the realtors were very excited to be able to put them into their rental packages.
Correct.
Well, Cliff, thank you and the Homeowners Association for everything you've done, and we certainly look forward to hearing more from you at the next meeting and seeing a presentation. And then we can discuss what we can do to further help get the word out and endorse the project.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any other committee members?
I think it's a great public service.
Yeah.
Thank
There you
you. Thank you, everyone. With that, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 12:47 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye, all.
See you.
Does anybody have a copy of an old set of minutes so I don't have to recreate the wheel? I mean, I know how to type minutes, but I'm not sure how we do it here.
Send John Gauger an email, because he's the one that's been taking them the last several years.
I don't have his. Do you have his email address?
It should be, I'll get it to you.